Hey, there we go.
There we go.
And Kate's just coming in as well. Morning, Kate. Oh, afternoon now.
It is afternoon. Welcome. I'll just do a very quick welcome, and then I'm going to hand over to Roshan, who is going to be facilitating this session for us as part of this collaboration between Knowledge Group as well as VIC ICT and Sportsbet. And we are going to be talking about slightly touching on the WGEA report that was released recently around the gender pay gap, and looking at what good looks like in an organisation. And that is where we'll hand over to Sandy to talk about that from Sportsbet's perspective, but also looking at what Knowledge does to help women and other, actually helping all individuals who are looking at a career pivot, because we all know that if we're afraid to pivot or change our careers, sometimes we can get stuck, and that's a place that none of us want to be. So in saying all of that, I am Mary Beth Hosking. I am the CEO of VIC ICT for Women, and I am so pleased to have all of you here on this call with us, enjoying one of our member-only webinars, which we produced throughout the course of the year. And Roshan, I'm going to hand it over to you and your capable hands.
Amazing, thank you. Oh, sorry. Okay, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, me and Gemma are in the same room, so just working off of her laptop here. But yeah, thank you all for joining us today, and it's really good to meet you all. Yeah, I think I'm going to just start by giving a really high level bit of context around some of the insights that we got from the WGEA reporting, and then have Gemma from Knowledge and talk a little bit about kind of the part of the life cycle that we're trying to impact at Knowledge, have Sandy talk a little bit about how Sportsbet are actually doing a really good job in this space and be able to take some quite actionable insights away from for you guys on that. And then for Mary Beth to talk about kind of that ongoing support life cycle for women in the tech space to make sure that they stay in the industry and kind of get the support that they need to progress into more senior roles and such. I think for us, some of the more interesting things that came out of that reporting season was one, that it's really awesome that this is going to happen on a really consistent basis now, and knowing that on a really regular basis, companies are really going to be held accountable, and that we can see sort of that really granular progression as we go forward over the next few years. One of the really key things I think that we could see through it that representation was a really key determiner of how successful companies were in achieving pay parity. And one of the that means different things in different spaces, but we know obviously that when we're looking at tech specifically, women are really underrepresented in tech roles, but it's a really, really high paying industry. So it's really important that we actually get really good representation in this sector, but more broadly, kind of not just at an entry level, but all the way through that sort of like mid-career and into more senior leadership roles as well. And so moving women away from being kind of really highly represented in those lower paid quartiles and moving them through that life cycle. The other thing that we could see through that is that the kind of HR processes throughout an employee life cycle, right through from how a job is advertised, through to what happens when they're hired and what that process looks like, through to what those pay cycle reviews look like once they're actually working with a company. So that there isn't like a really like one size fits all approach for how a company can do well from a parity perspective, but there are a whole different bunch of levers to look at. And so I think the final kind of key takeaway from this is that companies and individuals have to be really, really data driven in terms of understanding what are they doing well, where are they falling behind, and using that data to kind of make really informed policy and process decisions that will have a really meaningful impact on each of those companies. And so saying we're going to hire more women and we're going to pay women more, that in and of itself is just not going to be enough. It's not going to do the work that we need to do. So what the takeaways that each company should be taking from this are really individual. They're really, really specific, and we just want to kind of take today to give you some kind of like some ideas and some actual insights that you can use within your own companies as well. So I might start by asking all of the panelists just to give us a really brief introduction to who you are, what you're doing, and why you're actually here today, kind of why this is an important topic for you. Jem, if I'll start with you.
Yeah, Paul, thank you. And a really good setting of the scene there as to kind of, I mean, I think a good news story as to where to come from and move forward with increasing representation and ensuring that women are parity is reached. Knowledge, what we do is we create tech talent for the sector, with the view that when you take away any kind of unconscious bias and remove all barriers to entry, that we will naturally have a pool of talent that is representative of the community as a whole. Personally, I am a return to work mum who is in a partnerships role, and I really wanted to get into the tech sector for a long time. I come from a media background, and I found it extremely difficult to enter the sector. A lot of barriers to entry were you don't have 20 years of SaaS sales experience, so there's not quite the door wasn't as opened. And I said to myself, whenever I get into, if I can make a break for it and get into the sector, I'm going to do everything that I possibly can to ensure that there's seats at the table. And so I feel very serendipitous to have wound up at Knowledge, because that's exactly what we're doing. We're trying to make the sector more representative of the community, more representative of organisations' customers, and it's just going to make it better in the long run for everyone. So thanks for having me and listening to me today.
Thanks, Jem. Sandy, can we jump to you?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Roisin, and thanks for the context and the build-up. Jem's quite excited to be here today, so thanks for having me. My name is Sandy Iyer, General Manager Data Science at Sportsbet, and prior to Sportsbet, but I have been for about 16 months now. I've done a number of different roles within data as a discipline in financial services, retail, and other industries as well. The reason I'm here is why each of us are here, quite passionate about women in workforce, and particularly women in tech, and how can we remove that barriers, Gemma, that you talked about, and how can you contribute to that. And if I think about that, about my passion for women in tech as well, I'm a part of VIC ICT, by the way. I volunteer for Google Go for IT program, and I have been for the last 4 years, and I absolutely take pride in being able to contribute to more that gender diversity needle, even if it's so slightly every single time. But also coming from Sportsbet, a wagering, online wagering sector, roughly 80% of Sportsbet's customers are males. Despite that, I can share with you some stats later on that shows the level of gender diversity and parity we've been able to achieve through some mindfully crafted initiatives that that everyone around the company is rallying behind to achieve what we've achieved, which is just goes to show that if you get behind it, and if the entire organization gets behind diversity and inclusion, definitely can make it happen, regardless of what the external perception of an industry or an organization is. So that's why I'm here, and lovely. I would love to share thoughts, but also hear from other people on the call too.
Awesome. Thanks, Sandy. And Mary Beth, I know most people here probably know who you are, but actually it would be really lovely to hear about what made you sort of pivot your career a little bit away from being in a really sort of more hands-on technical environment to driving change in the space with VIC ICT.
Thanks, Roshan. Look, VIC ICT, I've always been passionate about. I've been a member, a mentor, been part of many of the programs in the past. And I was a global CIO at a gaming and wagering organization, not Sportsbet, but the tiny little, the little sister of Sportsbet. And what I noticed when I started in that organization was such an incredible disparity between the number of women in the tech space versus the number of men in the tech space, but also the cultural shift that was necessary to enable that. And in that small little segment of that world, I was able to make change because having a female CIO enabled women, or gave women the view that it was a safe space to work. a safe space that they would feel included in, that they would not be, that their careers would be considered and they would not sort of remain at entry level or lower level positions. That there was an opportunity for them. And that was great in a small little company of under 500 people, but I wanted to be able to do more. And from that career pivot perspective, an opportunity arose, and we are very lucky to have Chris Skipper-Conway, who's on this call. She is the board chair of VIC ICT for Women and has been an absolute diversity, equity and inclusion spokesperson for many years, and is well across the WGEA report as well. And really, from my perspective, when I was interviewing for the role, Chris, you'll recall, I said, I feel like there's more I could be doing to support women across STEM, not just technology. We do know that science, technology, engineering and math, or the science, engineering and math spaces all eventually lead into technology in some way. And I wanted to be able to do more. And I wasn't able to do more in sort of my little bubble, in that my little portion of the world. So I felt that if I joined an organization such as VIC ICT for Women, I could help grow what it is that we do. And that's where my passion is. It is about those underrepresented organizations being given the skills and the tools with which to feel that they are able to bring more women in, and to give women the tools to be able to stay in the technology space. Because I see so many bright-eyed and bushy-tailed young women going through the Go Girl event, going through our Grad Girls program, and then falling off and leaving technology. And I think we have to draw a line in the sand. So for me, Roshan, this is what I've done. I've drew a line in the sand in my own career and said, no, this needs to stop now and we need to be doing more. And that's why I took this career pivot. And I'm really excited. And I'm so glad we've got some people here that are just interested in this conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Maribeth. Okay, cool. I guess in terms of my first question to the panel then, Gemma, as knowledge, you're focusing more on kind of that piece of just getting more women into the pipeline, getting them into the industry in the first place. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about what that solution actually looks like and maybe some of the experiences of the knowledgists themselves and then the companies who've hired them?
Yeah, of course. So I kind of touched on when I was introducing myself that Knowledge creates tech talent for the sector. We're really focused on increasing representation through our program of education, mentoring and support. We know traditionally that tech pays pretty well as a sector as a whole. People were interested in moving to tech roles. Like myself, I felt like media was turning into a bit of a dinosaur industry. Tech seemed really future focused. It's really creative. There's lots going on all the time. It moves quite quickly. And often it offers a flexible working environment. So on the surface level, it should stand to reason that women are very attracted to tech. But via the traditional pathways, we know that those kind of numbers aren't really stacking up. 1 in 10 women are doing STEM degrees. Yet via non-traditional pathways like Knowledge, we have no shortage of people clamoring to get to come in the door. We get about 2,500 to 3,000 applicants per cohort, which we typically keep quite small in order to ensure that the learning environment is a successful one. And I think because we've kind of removed this barrier to entry, we fund, like for transparency, we fund the program. So there's no upfront cost to anyone. That removes any kind of financial burden. Like us really, I'm still paying off my student loan and I'm 40. So I can appreciate that STEM education is really expensive, and to pivot your career, we're doing it in this really intensive 12-week environment. So that's really attractive, having the financial burden removed and having time to upskill and be able to switch your career within essentially three to 6 months is really attractive for some folks, as opposed to having to go through a 4-year retraining program. So I think on that level, that's where we do a really good job of being able to bring more women into the sector. And then because these people are changing their career, and the vast majority of folks that come through Knology are the average age is 28 and 80% are career changes. So these are kind of folks that have had kind of, it's not their first rodeo. They've had commercial experience before. They understand how to communicate with stakeholders. We're really rigorously assessing to make sure that the kind of folks that organizations would want in your team. And therefore, it means that they've probably got leadership qualities or had leadership experience before. We've seen time to ramp really quickly. We have a non-binary person who came through the Knology program, Forrest, who was working for 5 years in the aviation sector, but absolutely frothing to get into technology, was coding at night, late into the night, just following their passion. Now on site with 9 and taking Scrum Master certification because they came from a managerial background of leading a busy crew of ground crew where that's pretty high stakes and it's really fast paced. They demonstrated all the right transferable skills for a role in tech. And I think that we do see Knologists come through and move up the ranks really quickly because they have had prior experience. They know how to they know how to manage stakeholders and they know how to communicate well and effectively.
Yeah, and I think it's really key to note that part as well, because obviously one of the larger challenges in if we look at the tech sector specifically is that drop off from women who are in that mid-career phase who might take some time out and then kind of either not come back to the industry at all or not want to move up into a leadership role because for whatever reason the environment doesn't feel right for it. So knowing that oftentimes the women coming through our program have already done that time out, they return to work mums, and now they're really ready to focus on their career for the long term. So we do really see a really big uptick, I guess, from that representation at a leadership level within sort of 2-3 years of them coming through the program, which has been really exciting to see. Sandy, at Sportsbet, obviously you guys came out of the reporting season with like a lot to be proud of, and I think we were quite excited to be able to give people an opportunity to hear about how to do things well when we are thinking about companies working at scale, and like really deliberate practices and policies that have been put in place to create, environments where women are well represented, they're paid well, and they're obviously thriving. Can you talk to us a little bit about some of those policies and practices specifically?
Sure. I think just before I jump onto that, just sharing a few stats for the benefit of the audience today. So with the recent WGEA report, Sportsbet came out with a median pay gap of 0.6%, so nearly no pay gap. And this is with 36% of our current Sportsbet team across the organization is identify themselves as female, and 35% of senior leaders are also females. So again, just to put that into perspective, that it's not a small cohort; it's a significant third, or more than a third of the group right now are females, and we've managed to get that 0.6% median pay sort of gap now, which we're extremely proud of. But there's two things I'd like to say. One is that didn't happen by accident. And B, there is a long way to go because 36% is not sufficient. As a next interim target, we are aiming for 40% by 2026, and we're going to push for 50% then beyond. That's our more 2028 target. So we are constantly working towards it, and it's Sportsbet's parent organization, which is Flutter. It's a global organization that are rallying behind it as well. So like I said, it's not by accident that we landed here. The way I see Sportsbet has worked and organized efforts around this is in a female's career in an industry. Let's say there are 4 stages from recruitment to engagement and thriving, then promotion, where you're looking at development and promotion into bigger roles within the organization. How do you do that? And finally, retention. Now, if you do the first 3 things well, retention, you're going to get retention anyway. And we did see that we had pretty good retention rates for females. In fact, we had higher retention rates in females than males for a few years. So we knew that if we did the first 3 things properly, we'd get the last. So then our immediate focus was on recruitment, which I think a lot of organizations in the last few years have been prioritizing, and not going to share something others haven't tried there, but a few things we've done. One is gender neutral sort of adverts and job descriptions. Everyone's adopting, but being very serious about that. Like every single job description that goes out is gender neutral, specifically calling out that even if you don't have all the skills that's required for this, and I think this comes back to Knology and some other career switchers as well, that we want to open it deliberately to anyone, even if you're self-doubting, you're not confident, not ticking 8 out of 10 boxes, you're still welcome. That's there. But another good thing I've seen my few months at Sportsbet is we have females in every single interview, not just every candidate's experience, every single interview. If there are 2, sometimes there might be 3 interviewers, we have at least 1 female. So as we get females through the interview process, they're actually seeing role models, they're actually seeing advocates, and they're already developing confidence on how they're going to thrive at Sportsbet. So that's worked really, really well for us. Some feedback we've received from candidates say that we are actually seeing females from senior positions as well in those interviews. So they, you can't be what you can't see is a thing there. And we also then have programs such as we have a draft program where we take in, it's like graduates, but not graduates. It's our young cohort that we bring in every year, and we take them through a couple of years of knowing what's happening across all the other departments, build skills, and finally choose where they want to see their careers. And we are very gender balanced in that as well. We consciously look for certain positions to be females, and it's 50% for now. So 50% of our draftees every year are females, and we don't compromise on that. We leave. Sometimes, we have to wait longer till we get a female applicant for that, and we are fine leaving it open for a while till we get that. So that's a lot of stuff we do in recruitment space. But I think what we found is the biggest problem, especially within Sportsbet, was what I heard a term last year around the glass labyrinth, which is you get in, but then you don't know how to actually find the entrance to a glass labyrinth of promotions or to get to the next level, because you don't know where the entrance is. Once you're in it, you still don't know how to get through it, and you're stuck there because it's a labyrinth and you don't know how to make your way up. So it's just a beautiful way of describing how females feel when they're even in that middle management. How do I push myself to that senior management roles? So we, since last couple of years, have been focusing on senior women alone. So a number of development programs for senior women, skill build session, and advocacy. So 3 things there. Advocacy in terms of executives running mentorship programs for more mid-level female leaders. That helps in building confidence as well. Skills, so just a lot of females have said they'd like financial acumen and training around how to read a P&L. And those are the areas that they have the soft skills. They have the empathy. They don't want training on that to go to the next level. What they want is what they lack, and that's what they said. We focused on that as well, and we've had very like a top 100 females across Flutter, which is a parent company of Sportsbet, who all met in London to go through very targeted development program for females. All concerted efforts to move the needle around the senior management. And through all of this, what we've achieved in 2023, 57% of all the hires, senior management hires last year were females. So the numbers then talk to how these initiatives are playing up. So I'll stop there, and there's a lot more I can share, and I'm very happy for questions to come through or reflections to come as well. As I pass back, Roshan, to yourself.
Yeah, awesome. That is good. And I actually have a couple of questions for you on some of that as well, but obviously if anyone in the audience wants to raise their hand, please do. One of my questions then is, do you think the more important order in which to concentrate on these things is getting the internal stuff right? So thinking about the engagement and retention piece before going heavy on kind of the recruitment and hiring piece and trying to bring more women to the business? Or do you think it's something that ideally is all happening in tandem?
Look, it really depends on where your organization is. No one likes a leaky pipe, right? So you do a lot to bring a lot of talent in, but then you're bleeding talent, and nothing as you're building your positive brand for women to come and work for your organization, if there are people who are leaving, women who are leaving, who are then not great advocates for the organization, you got a big problem there. So I think it depends on different where your organization is and what your real problem is. And data is important. I'm a data person. The first thing we did as a group was looked at the data. Where is the leakage the most? Is it the attraction? Is it retention? Is it promotion? Where is it? And at different points in time, it's been different. So I've actually talked to you about 3 different areas of focus in the last 3 years we've had. So I don't think there's a silver bullet answer there. But more importantly, can I say one thing? It's not about one initiative. It's about the mindset. And a very simple example is when we as leadership team, we sit down and go in for performance calibration. There is at least one, if not more, a non-HR person saying, do we have enough females in the top performers 4 or 5? And always look at the data by that and then debate why not. And it might be natural, right? We're not saying we don't disadvantage anyone, but there's someone who's constantly reminding, and that's the culture. That's the mindset we're talking about.
Awesome. And on your point around 57% of the senior management hires being women, does that include internal promotions as well as external hires?
Normally it would. Actually, it is. It is a mix of both. Yes.
Yeah.
A mix of both. We just had a little bit of a hiring blitz last year, and we used that to our advantage, and we're fortunate to get a lot of excellent female talent.
Yeah. Awesome. Does anyone else have any questions for Sandy specifically about any of that stuff? Sammy? Yeah.
Hi, Sandy.
Hey,
I
Sam.
love what you're saying. You're the best. I'm obsessed with you. I'm interested in how you collect the demographic data, because sometimes that can be sensitive. And so are you doing that by opting in through like a feedback loop on a survey? Like, what's the process you do that, and what's the cadence that you do that at the beginning, the end, middle, the end? Like, how are you doing that?
So very good question. And it might be, it's sometimes overwhelming for people to provide that information. We do that via our engagement surveys, which happens twice a year, mid-year and end of year. And we do establish the confidentiality and the inability to identify as well in very, very clearly. So we've seen the participation rates going up and people offering up because they are optional data points, but we've seen that more and more females are getting comfortable with sharing that information. And that also not only gives us the diversity picture on gender, but it also we're collecting on ethnic and cultural backgrounds and disability as well. Those are also some of our inclusion focus areas in Sportsbet.
Thank you. Yeah, I had a similar experience. The first time you give out demographics, they're a bit worried that then you can track their survey responses. But the second year, when they saw how it works, then they're all fine with it. But yeah. I think demographic is intriguing to collect.
And there's ways you can explain to your employees why not, because we won't look at, so the team, there'll be only 1 or 2 people who have access to the raw data in terms of the splits, etc. If you're personally identifiable, if it's less than 5 people, we wouldn't look at that cut. Nobody would be able to cut the data in a way that be able to see a cell which has got less than 5 people. So that makes you, likely personally identified.
May I ask, what's the tool that you use? Is it Culture Amp?
Yes.
Yeah, same. Okay, because when you said 5, I was like, because that's built into Culture Amp. Okay, great. Yeah, they're phenomenal. Okay, fabulous.
I had a question for you, Sandy, if you don't mind. I didn't put my hand up, but I love that piece that you talked around about culture. And there are some, and I know that we've got some change specialists here on this call. And I would love to know, so you said over the last 3 years, that's been sort of that timeline of changing the way with which you do your recruitment side of things, where you start gathering the information, do those sorts of things. Do you still think that Sportsbet has a ways to go, or is it it's like another 3 or 5 years to that you'll keep going and then the culture will be set? Or do you feel that if you don't keep your foot on the accelerator and keep at it, keep providing that data and everything, that you'll slip back? What are your thoughts?
I think I remember the discussion from the Women in Tech conference just recently, which talked about the 110, 20 years of debt. And I think if you take the foot off the pedal, now, all the effort that has got us to here will actually then fall apart. So whilst a lot of it is a part of second nature of individuals at Sportsbet, like recruitment, a recruiting manager, no matter what level, would ask for a female to be in the panel, and so on and so forth. That's very well embedded. What is not is that, again, that the how we females thrive, that part is where I don't think it's a part of our culture yet. And what I mean by that is microaggressions that people don't, you can't put a finger on and say, this is what I'm facing, this is what is stopping me from putting myself forward for the next level, or learn, or even thrive in my job. Those are not easy. And as difficult as they are for females to put a finger on it and say, this is what it is, it's not me, it's this, it's even harder for men to understand that concept, because it's very unconscious or subconscious. A lot of times very overwhelming as well. It's like, whoa, why am I rallying behind this? What is my role? What's my identity as a male in the team? And there's a big change that needs to happen in there, because we've not done a good job of painting the identity of males in this revolution, or in this movement. We all get together, we talk a lot about females, we encourage each other, but there are few males, and this is the data we collected very recently, I'm sharing. There are few males who found, who were threatened that this agenda is getting on a really, really high priority as well, and fairly so, because they didn't understand the role they play. And one of the stats I heard is for every female you empower, a male is also empowered. And that is so, so true. If we are able to explain that, and able to explain males' identity in this movement, then that's when you will truly achieve the culture, because everyone knows what role they're playing in an organization. So anyway, I can go on for an hour, Marybeth. But
I think that's really true. I wanted to highlight one of the programs that we've got running, a free program that we're running through as part of WorkSafe Victoria and VIC ICT for Women, is the Work Well program, which is looking at eliminating gender-based violence among workplaces, and we do see that in the technology space, and it's around that microaggressions and all of those sorts of things, and it's that fear of change, that panic, that idea that what does harmony actually mean? Because diversity is about harmony. It's not about just putting one gender above another gender. It's about bringing harmony, thought leadership, and diversity of thought. And when we can actually start talking about that, if anybody on this call is interested in knowing more about the Work Well program, which is free, and getting your organizations involved, please do reach out to me separately. Happy to send you the link for to be able to sign up for that. We do have another question, Roshan. We had a question from, I think it's from you, Caroline, which is, Sandy, do you disclose the gender pay equity in performance reviews?
Yes, we do. So again, depends on the size of the groups that we're talking about. We don't want to disclose a person, etc. But we disclose it at varying levels. We definitely debate and consider that. So we don't walk away from a room of performance reviews where we agree that we are comfortable with a pay gap. We never do that. That's a total no-no for us.
So Sandy, it's Chris. Actually, Marybeth, that's one I raised, because one of the things that I've always been concerned about is that when you're in the recruitment space, when you're being recruited, you may not know whether you're being treated fairly. And we tend as women to step back from that and rather take the demure way of accepting what we're given or accepting what we think is fair. One of the things that I've found really helpful is during performance reviews, if you really put down, this is the average pay for this particular role, and this is where you sit in a performance review. That just gives a person the opportunity to either step up maybe where they were falling down slightly, or a way to actually feel comfortable and you've got buy-in for retention, that they are being treated fairly.
Yeah, that's a very good point. That's not something I think we do as overtly, but it's excellent the way you're positioned. You explained that, Chris, for new recruits as well as for existing people. Very, very important to give that, give that message back. Because it's one thing that you're considering that in closed doors. The other thing is, playing that back to the female, give them the confidence that this is fair.
Yes. The other thing I wanted to raise is, if I may, is that from the research that I've done on equity and inclusion, a lot of men are finding that they don't outwardly go to create a bias. And perhaps one of the things that we've done is not explained to them, and that's where the data becomes so important. Let's not talk about whether they should do unconscious bias training or some other training to amplify their input on the bias, but let's show them the data rather. And I think that from your point of view, if you can show the data and say, this is where the data from your team is, what can we do to make that change for you, rather than say, I think all the men in your team need to go on unconscious bias training. Sorry,
No.
just very passionate about it all.
That's that's very well said, Chris. That's not going to work, and you can't define subconscious bias. There's no definite. It just plays out differently, right? It's just each person is different. Males, you can't club males and say all males think this way. That's not the thing. And it's same for females. You can't club all females and say. I think to that point, there's one other thing I'd like to share. What we did recently was a listening session across about 400 women in technology at Sportsbet. And there's a group of women in technology at Sportsbet who then summarized the data and played back themes of 5 themes that came back. And that was first played back to our executive team. And then now that is actually being played back to every single team. Some of the reactions I've seen from that is priceless. Oh my God, this is not at all what the intention of a lot of conversations were. And this is just, taken me by surprise as well. So absolutely, Chris, that's a way to go.
Yeah, sure. And just always focusing on the constructive, like, how do we move forward? How do we make things better, rather than blaming and, pointing the finger at anybody? Or like, it's just never the way to go. I'd be interested maybe from all of the panel members, slightly different experiences of this, but to just talk about the impact of like mentorship in this space. So if I know we've only got a couple of minutes left, but maybe just to touch briefly on anything that people can take away from that perspective. And Mary Beth, might start with you.
Look, I think for anyone that's on this call, male, female, doesn't make any difference. However you identify, is that understand the difference between a mentor and a sponsor, or that sponsor/advocate, because that the mentor is going to help you sort of think about and formulate what your career might look like and what those career steps are going to be. But that sponsor/advocate is that person that's going to see something in you that maybe you don't see in yourself, and they're the person that's actually going to put you up for opportunities. And I think that for everyone on the call, and whenever I listen to women speaking about how they've gotten to the C-suite, they always talk about an opportunity that was given to them, and that they just grabbed onto any opportunity, regardless of what it might be, knowing that if it really didn't work out well, or it wasn't the right opportunity at the time, it gave them some transferable skills, but also the knowledge that it was maybe not something that they want to go into later, and then they can actually move and pivot from there. So having those sponsors speaking on your behalf and actually putting you forward, they're not going to do that if they're not going to put their career or their network on the line, or that sort of thing, if they don't think you're worthy of it. So when someone says something to you that's like, I think you should apply for this because it's a great opportunity, I think you can do it, it's okay to go, oh, I'm feeling a little bit insecure about that, but step through, because these opportunities, they may not always be presented to you all the time. So that's what I would say about that.
Yeah.
Well, I would sort of say, because Knology like moves in the emerging early talent space. So for anyone on the call that that wants to focus and nurture on that level of their talent and their tech teams, I can't underestimate the value of having a mentor for people at that early transition stage for their career. We know that the data suggests that that's the highest attrition rate for that 0 to 6 months in a tech role is where the highest attrition and dropout rate is. So ensuring extra support at that level is crucial. What we do at Knowledge4STEM is that we have our own talent team checking in with all of our knowledgists, ensuring that they're feeling adequately supported, and then we have the Microsoft MVP community also support them, and we sort of deal with everything from imposter syndrome to advocating for yourself, dealing with burnout, because shifting and transitioning into a tech career can be can be quite stressful, and you can burn out really quickly. So having that additional layer of support, I think, for knowledgists has been really crucial. And that being said, we haven't, our attrition rate is almost zero. Most of the people that have come through the course have gone on to have pipeline talent for the long term.
And Sandy, anything from your experience that you'd like to touch on in that space?
I think Mary Beth and Gemma have covered it mostly. I've personally myself benefited from having sponsors in my career, given me a voice when I've had least confidence. So if you've not got one, I'd definitely do that. I've got a perspective on I've got sponsors, different people at different times, but I've got mentors for different purposes as well. So you don't need to stick with one mentor, I feel. There's one of my ex-bosses I call, who's in the UK. I know with a specific problem, and I know that this person will be able to help me or hear me out when I have a specific type of problems. And if there's an industry related, a category related something, I call someone else. So I have a network of mentors as well, which is also a good thing to have, and take time out to keep up your relationship with your network as well. It's important. And I think I second what Mary Beth put on the chat on mentorship. Awesome program. So again, really encourage that as well.
Awesome. Okay, well, we've got 2 minutes left. Is there any final sort of questions from the audience, or any final thoughts anyone wanted to share?
So I'd like to share that for those of you that know me, I have actually run my own recruitment company, and several times have mentored the team in my recruitment company. And what I found was, just being totally honest and comfortable in this situation, I found that I was focusing on growing their career in my organization. So what I had to do from that was, which was taking time and an investment on my part. But what I did from that was I pivoted then and actually put them through the mentorship program, obviously being part of VIC ICT, knew that program and the results. And what happened was, from that, they actually got mentorship around them as a person, not them as the job. So one of the things that I thought was really important lesson for me was that you become passionate about the environment that you're in, obviously to grow, retain, and grow your people. But what you've got to realize is that whole person is who you have to grow. And that whole person sometimes needs that outward view, not just only the job view. And I found, in my being honest with you, that I was pivoting more to how I could grow them in their career. Whereas in mentorship, they actually got a broader perspective. I know mentorship isn't the only program. Of course, Mary Beth and I are very determined to make sure that we give back to the community. But anybody who can get that external mentorship really benefits from it, because you get a better, more wholesome perspective.
Yeah. Perfect. Amazing. Well, thank you all so much for jumping on with us today. I think we'll send out some kind of recaps to you all as well, but obviously please do reach out to us if you have any other questions. You know where we are. I think we're all on that same email chain. But yeah, really wonderful to have you all with us today.
And thanks for joining VIC ICT. It's the kickoff of our webinars. So look out for the webinar series, which you can see on our website. Thank you, Roshan. Thank you, Gemma. Thank you, Natalie. Thank you, Sandy. What an amazing event. Thank you all for joining. We'll let you go and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.